So a lot of my friends and cousins went to boarding school growing up, so I definitely heard stories from them, good and bad. Anytime I imagined what it would be like, I thought it would be like the one Emma Roberts gets sent to in Wild Child, or the one from St. Trinian's. I mean, in an ideal world, the boarding school I'd want to end up at is obviously Hogwarts, but that's obviously never gonna happen, so I guess I'll just live my life out being a useless muggle. What is up, you guys? Hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host, Eamon Hassan, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're gonna get into the top 10 scary boarding school stories. Starting us off at number 10 is the Dryer. This story utterly horrified me. I don't even know what to say. This one involves the Dozier School for Boys located in Marianna, Florida, and this school was already known for the horrible abuse the students underwent during the 50s and 60s. Now, on paper, the state boarding school was meant to be a place the boys could go for not only education, but rehabilitation as well. For the 11 years it stayed open, the school became notorious for the abuse, torture, rape, and murder of its students. 55 unmarked graves were found on the grounds, and around 100 deaths were documented at the school. Last year, during pollution cleanup, a further 27 graves were identified, which I mean is ridiculous. In my entire high school career, only 2 people died. Either way, former students started speaking out about the abuse and got the nickname the White House Boys. One of them, Roger Kaiser, shared that he saw a dead student fall out of the dryer. The staff had put him in one of those large dryers and killed him. Jerry Cooper, another White House boy, shared that he was beaten with a leather strap in his bed and that the first blow literally sent him 1.5 feet off his bed. Coming in at number 9 is the Headmaster. A.N. Wilson was sent to Hillstone School located in Worcestershire at the age of 7 years old, although some students were a lot younger than that. The school's headmaster, Rudolph Barber Simpson, was a sexual sadist, and his wife was also a monster. Anytime she found out that Rudolph fancied one of the students and had sexually abused them, his wife would punish the student with torture techniques like force-feeding you your least favorite food till you vomited, push you into the pool before you could swim, or even lock you in a cage, the same cage that usually had rabbits and guinea pigs in it to show prospective parents. A 70-year-old man literally broke down after reading Wilson's article because he had attended the school 10 years before he had. At the start of a school holiday, his mom had found blood in his underwear and rushed him to the doctor, only to find out that he had been raped by who else than Rudolph himself. Another boy at the school had suffered from bouts of depression after going to the school and eventually admitted Rudolph routinely assaulted him, and he later committed suicide in his early 20s. At number 8, we have the Tsar. Back in June of 2012, journalist Whit Shepard exposed Peter Hindle, a former maths teacher at Massachusetts Deerfield Academy. Nicknamed the Tsar, Hindle was well loved by the students when he really shouldn't have been. Whit was a student at the boarding school from 1979 to 83, and it was during his second last year when he fell prey to Hindle's predatory ways. At first, it was just a few innocent back rubs offered by the Tsar, but it wasn't long before things became highly inappropriate and sexual. Hindle waited till Whit was 18 before he started abusing him, and the worst part was the teacher would even shower with the grade's football team in their small locker room after practice. Like, hello, someone arrest this pedophile. Filling at number 7 slot are the Isolation Boxes Part 1. The Midwest Academy in Iowa was the stuff of nightmares. Former students shared how the staff would keep the students in tiny concrete isolation boxes for days or even weeks at a time for punishment. Inside, they would have to sit in the exact same position in silence and get little to no food as motivational recordings were repeatedly played. Emily Beeman shared that you would literally just sit there banging your head against the wall and you could never even sleep because the girls in the other boxes would just be screaming the entire time. The only reason Emily got out of the box is because she cut herself with a bottle cap and begged EMTs to take her anywhere else. Another former student, Lauren Snyder, said the recordings would turn up so loud when she was in there that the speakers would just make a loud screeching sound, and it got so bad she eventually tried committing suicide by tying a sock around her neck. The only thing the girls could look forward to were their bathroom breaks from the boxes, which were also still few and far between. Now at number 6 are the Isolation Boxes Part 2. I honestly read so many horrible accounts of what happened to these students at this academy that I genuinely wanted to give it 2 parts because I feel like they deserve it. Rachel Atkinson was put in the box and she refused to run during gym class, and by the time she was released from it 2 weeks later, she had lost a whopping 20 pounds. So just imagine how little the staff actually feed these students. When students were behaving well, they could eventually rank to level 3 in points, which meant they could help the staff surveillance the boxes. Sean McCarthy rose to that level and said the worst thing he ever saw was one girl cutting her finger and drawing on the walls with her blood before pissing on the floor. And the torture at the school went beyond the boxes. There was sexual and physical abuse between staff and students, and the Southeast Iowa jury finally found former boarding school director Benjamin Train guilty of abusing his students. So I mean, there's justice there, but not for all the students who are still having nightmares about their experiences till this day. Coming in at number 5 is talking to girls. This one made me quite sad just because of how young the boy in the story was. This story took place back in 2014 on Valentine's Day at Abundant Life Academy located in Caroline County, Virginia. 3 life coaches and a director punished a 14-year-old boy for simply talking to a girl, since the academy had a rule about not talking to them. The 4 men literally chase him and tackle him down to the ground while beating him, and there's literally a video of this on CBS 6, and I watched it. To my horror, I recommend you guys don't. They then took to waking him from sleep every 90 minutes, all of which was apparently the punishment written down by the academy for an instance like this. The 4 employees were charged with mob and assault, but after striking a deal with the Commonwealth's attorney, they only pleaded guilty to simple assault. This is actually disgusting. These are 4 grown-ass men ganging up on this tiny 14-year-old boy. Other accounts of abuse include making the boy stand in a swamp for long periods of time. At number 4 is branding. Now everyone knows boarding schools are strict, but I don't think any school is stricter than a military boarding school. The one in question is St. John's Military School located in Salina, Kansas. In order to discipline their students, one prevailing tradition proved lethal, and that was to let senior students be in control of disciplining the fresh recruits. Which, hello, have we learned nothing from the Stanford prison experiment? If you give people authority and power over others, they will abuse it. For example, in 2012, 11 students from the school came forward about abuse and hazings they had suffered at the school. One claimed he was pinned down and branded on his belly with an insignia pin, which is absolutely awful. Jesse McTaggone dreamed of being an army officer his whole life, so imagine the horror he and his parents suffered when after only 2 weeks of being at St. John's he had to be rushed to the hospital. He'd been so badly beaten and abused by senior students that both his legs had been broken. Filling at number 3 slot is Madam Koi Koi. In the late 1970s, there was a very beautiful, stylish teacher that worked at a secondary boarding school in Calabar, Nigeria. Legend has it she used to wear heels every single day, which kind of made a koi-like sound, so that's where the name originated. As beautiful as she was on the outside, Madam Koi Koi was as hideous on the inside. She was known for physically abusing the hell out of her students any chance she got. She reveled in it. Eventually, her students got sick of management not doing anything about her and took matters into their own hands. One night as she left school, a group of students cornered her, gagged her, and then beat the hell out of her. They didn't mean to kill her, but they accidentally had, and so panicking, they just threw her body over the back fence. The students assumed people would think armed robbers did the deed, but they'd be wrong. Slowly but surely, the students involved started disappearing one by one. The only one that survived was the one that beat her with her own shoes, because he was the only person who told people what they had actually done, and how he heard the sound of her heels around his hostel every single night. One night, after being terrorized by the sound for too long, he went to find the source, but he never returned. His body was found beaten to death the next day. Now at number 2 are American residential schools. At the end of the 1800s, around the end of the American Indian Wars, the US government was trying to find a solution to their quote-unquote Indian problem. Despite them coming and taking the land from the Native Americans, like there is no Indian problem, there was a colonization problem, and the colonizers made damn sure to disenfranchise the population as much as possible. The US government were baffled that Native Americans were somehow here first, and problematically so, still wanted their land. What a shock. Their solution was to kill the Indian in them and save the man, aka force assimilation into the culture, and that came in the form of residential boarding schools. Native American children were taken from their families by force and sent to schools miles away from their homes in hopes that there would be no cultural preservation. At the school, students weren't allowed to express their culture at all. That meant not speaking a single Indian word, not wearing long hair, and not even using their given American Indian names. They literally brainwashed these kids. Billy Wright, a Patuan Indian, was one of those students. When he went home, his grandma spoke to him in Indian and he didn't understand anything she was saying. When he told her his name was Billy, she said no it wasn't, and he said that's not what they told me. Can you imagine how brainwashed you have to be to not even know your name isn't Billy? They didn't even educate them properly, whether it was maths or English. They would just teach them carpentry and housekeeping so they could never do more than just that. And finally, at number 1 are Canadian residential schools. I don't think I could have made anything else take the top 2 spots, because the amount of abuse, heartbreak, torture, and more that the First Nations people of Canada suffered while residential schools were a thing is absolutely horrifying, and there really aren't enough words to describe how sorry I personally am for that happening to them and to all the Native Americans. Canadian MPs have done all to make up for any of the abuses these people have faced at the hands of the people in power who were meant to protect them as well, which is shocking. Either way, following on from the US, Canada tackled their Indian problem the same way by kidnapping Aboriginal kids and literally imprisoning them in residential schools. For hundreds of years, these kids were treated like absolute shite, sexually and physically abused, and even used in medical experiments, may it be exposure to disease, skin grafting, electroshock therapy, and more. Amnesty International shared that police and government officials would rent out residential school kids to pedophile rings. Around 50,000 kids died, and most of these schools have tons and tons of unmarked graves for students and even their kids born from being raped by church officials. Most people are actually even sterilized to stop them populating further. And that is it for today's video, guys. You'd be surprised that nearly every boarding school, if not a majority of them, there are abuse cases like this. I think it's absolutely shocking. I hope we can bring more cases to light with videos like this. As always, I've been your host, Iman Hassan, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Oh, is this how it goes?
Yeah. I'm f***ing moving this.
I mean, in an ideal world, Today, we're gonna get into the top 10 scary boarding school theory. I just ran out of breath. This one involves a dossier? Sounds about right. This A.N. Wilson was sent to Hillstone School located in Worcestershire. Me! At number 8, we have the Tsar. That's how you say it, right?
Tsar, yeah.
Tsar?
Tsar.
Okay. Three life coaches and I direct. Why can I speak English? 3 life coaches.
Just have to zoom it in because this is something I'll talk to Landon about. Sorry, but can you read that?
No. But I also have very bad eyesight.
Can you read that now?
No.